Hey, this is Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all natural, dry-aged USDA, prime Angus, and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all those gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had, probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100 for UppercutChops.com. All right, welcome in to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast. Everybody watching our Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, Wild Charter, and independent cable affiliates in select markets. Thanks for joining us. Also on Hotel TV, same. And everybody streaming on Pick Your Favorite Streamer, plus Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. Check that out, folks. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun group. Talk about your favorite foods, your favorite restaurants, favorite recipes. Make some friends, have some fun. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. All right, also, by the way, our friends over at Vacation Buddies are giving away a couple of nights right here in Las Vegas, Orlando, Florida, or in Branson, Missouri. If you can answer this very simple trivia question, what city in these United States of America has the tallest building? That's right, the single tallest building. Is it New York? Is it Chicago? Or is it Los Angeles? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with this station, but they want to give you a couple of nights in Las Vegas, Orlando, Florida, or Branson, Missouri. If you know the answer to that very simple trivia question, if so, call 888-576-5777. Call now. All right, so the coaching carousel in the National Football League is officially off to the races. And folks, it is incredibly chaotic. When you look at what John Harbaugh has done in the last 18 years in Baltimore, you almost wonder why this guy is even a part of that carousel in the first place. Now, pick your favorite organization. It doesn't matter which organization you heard it on. It doesn't matter where you read it, whatever. Look, everybody is reporting the same thing. And technically, you think about these vacancies. Now, there's 7 vacancies in the National Football League. It's kind of like Black Friday we have for shopping. This is Black Monday where people get fired, I suppose. That's what we're talking about. I mean, today isn't Monday, but my point is this is what happened on our past Monday, which just happened to be January 5th. And so think about this. All NFL head coaching jobs, they're attractive. If you can coach at the top level, you've done something right. And there are just 32 of them. And really, only a few of the spots become available every year. But not all NFL coaching jobs are created equal, as we all know. So ownership, front office, the structure, the quarterback situation, draft capital, salary cap, flexibility, and plus a whole bunch of other factors really say this one is more appealing than the next one. And let's face it, 5 NFL head coaches have been fired this week, and bringing the total number of openings up to 7. That's crazy to imagine. But then again, it's a business. So there could be more on the horizon. You never know. But for now, we have some of these to talk about. And you know what? Let's take a look at what Fox had stated in theirs. And in fact, this is courtesy of Ben Arthur. We're going to give him a little bit of credit over there at Fox Sports. And so he says the number 7 vacancy, the least desirable out of the 7 available, is the Arizona Cardinals. So apparently, Kyler Murray's time in the desert might be over. And, he is fun to watch. I got to tell you, folks, he's kind of like watching a video game. He really is. And so I'm not really sure where they're going in Arizona with all of their hoopla or lack thereof. Because Arizona, although they only won 3 games out of 17, they were in most of those games. And so Arizona does own all of its original 2026 draft picks, including the number 3 overall selection, and is projected to have over $21 million in cap space available, which ranks 18th in the league according to Over the Cap. So their projected 2026 cap space is 18th, like I said. Their top 2026 draft pick is number 3. And if we look at a mock draft, the mock draft, pick your favorite mock draft again. There's all kinds of those. And apparently, according to the one on the 4-letter network, they say Francis Magoya, offensive tackle and guard from Miami, is likely going to be the 3rd pick in the draft. So they say with Kyler Murray possibly leaving in the offseason, the Cardinals have a major question mark at quarterback, but with Mendoza and Moore coming off the board, Arizona would pivot to the offensive line, and Magoya is one of the cleanest evaluations of the draft class as a rock-solid, consistent lineman. 6'6", 315 is a mountain of a man, and he's the model of consistency and would fit as a plug-and-play option on an offensive line that has major right tackle issues. In fact, Arizona's current right tackle, Kelvin Beachum, is 36 now and set to be a free agent. So there's a real good shot he's going to be going elsewhere, trying to get his last big contract of his career. And the Cards' offensive tackle finished last in run blocking with a rate of an abysmal 69.9%, and Arizona gave up the 3rd most sacks in the league at 59. So going back to this coaching carousel, maybe that's one of the reasons that the people over at Fox had said that's the least attractive out of the 7 available. I'm not really sure because I think they have some pieces over there, and I would argue that it's probably not the bottom of the food chain. Here are the Cleveland Browns coming in at number 6, and the Browns quarterback situation remains a mess, of course, with Deshaun Watson's disastrous contract still on the books. Shedeur Sanders obviously is certainly not what I guess some people thought he was. And frankly, I won't even touch any of his rookie football cards because I think he is just a bust waiting to happen. Kind of like Michael Penix. What a joke that guy was. Anyway, that's in my opinion. So nonetheless, that Shedeur Sanders situation, we don't even know. And then we've got Dylan Gabriel, who probably should be the starter for that team, but yet Joe Flacco still remains in the picture, and Joe Flacco is still a viable option. Oh, that's right. Joe Flacco's not with them anymore. That's right. He's now with Cincinnati. That's right. And I said that on purpose because that's how much of a mess the Cleveland Browns are, really. And the Browns need to clean house from top all the way down to the bottom. I would put the Browns as the least attractive of the 7 coaching openings at this point because I just don't think the Browns have even what the Cardinals have as far as draft stock, and more importantly, I don't think they have that kind of system chemistry where they could dig out of this mess quickly. Just a few years removed, the Browns were a pretty good squad. And let's face it, the Browns were 5-12. Somehow they won 5 games, and they have $10 million less than the Arizona Cardinals in cap space. They're 27th in the league. And their number 1 pick, or better yet, their top pick in the 2026 draft will be number 6 overall. Lots of question marks there, folks. The Atlanta Falcons at number 5. And I don't even understand why they're so far down the list, but they say, being Fox Sports, that the Atlanta Falcons are the 5th most desirable coaching job out of the 7. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. I just mentioned Michael Penix as being, in my opinion, an enormous bust. He was the 8th overall pick in the 2024 draft, had 5 season-ending injuries since he started college. So he's already a disaster physically and obviously doesn't have the skill set, in my opinion, to excel at the top level of the game. So they say contingencies must be put in place, and the team has set March 13th as the date to make a decision on veteran Kirk Cousins, who they signed for $100 million, and that should be the guy anyway. I just don't understand why he's not. he played very well down the stretch, as expected. Atlanta doesn't have a first-round pick either in 2026, but Atlanta, they are projected to have $7 million more than the Arizona Cardinals in cap room. And so that's obviously partly to restructuring the final 2 years of Cousins' deal, but it doesn't matter. So the Atlanta Falcons' immediate future will be forged by a new president of football operations who is expected to be Falcons legend Matt Ryan. Now that ought to be interesting. And the basis of the future is the team's great young talent, including superstar running back Bijan Robinson and defensive end Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. They're all on rookie deals. So Atlanta looks like a hell of a lot better option than number 5 in this list. And as we go through the list, in the next segment, we're going to take a closer look at this. But I would imagine Atlanta should be right near the top of the food chain because they're playing in a very weak NFC South division as well. And let's face it, they won eight games in the last season, right? The season is still going on anyway. They're 8-9, which is not terrible because remember, they had the same record as the division winner in the first place. That's right. And the team ahead of them. And so is Atlanta that far off? No, I really think that that's one of the top jobs in the league right now available. All right, back here in a few minutes on the Sports Circus, we're going to go for number 4, 3, 2, and 1 with, of course, the coaching carousel ranking the 7 head coaching jobs and their vacancies. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
Show me the money!
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC Sports affiliates across North America with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at
714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100.
Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas at the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. And a big welcome back to everybody listening in on all of our affiliates, including our friends waking up with us over in Atlanta, WDJY 99.1 FM. And that's 1230 on the AM dial every day, Monday through Friday, that is, at 8 a.m. Right down the road, everybody driving home with us, big hello to you. Listening in on WAUD, that's War Eagle over in Auburn, Alabama. 1230 on the AM dial. That's home of the Atlanta Braves, stretching from Montgomery, Alabama, all the way over to Columbus, all points in between. Thanks for joining us there, up and down the Midwest, out to the West Coast, those driving between sunny Southern California and right here in Las Vegas, listening in on Highway Country Radio, 101.5 FM and 107.3 FM. That's home of the Vegas Golden Knights, the Raiders, and the Sports Circus at 7 p.m., again, Monday through Friday, up and down the West Coast, out to our friends over in Honolulu, CBS Sports, 1500 KHKA. That's home of the 49ers, Yankees, and Alabama Crimson Tide. And thanks for listening in on your afternoon drive on the way home. Plus everybody else on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, Wild Charter, and independent cable affiliates. We're applicable. Hotel TV, same. And, of course, everybody streaming on Pick Your Favorite Streamer. And all those listening in on Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, thanks for joining us there. A fun group talking about your favorite foods, your favorite restaurants and recipes. And just go make some friends. Have some fun over at Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, folks. Nice round of applause for them. All right. Now, we left off with this coaching carousel situation. And so Fox and everybody else had talked about the 7 NFL head coaching vacancies, which ones are more attractive than others. And one of their reporters had basically put this list together. They had Arizona as the worst of the 7 availabilities, which they certainly, in my opinion, are not so far. They had Cleveland as the 6th place, so far one up on the Cardinals, and I can't imagine how. And they have less money and less draft stock and a bigger conundrum over in Cleveland. And then somehow they had Atlanta as number 5, which I think Atlanta is a very, very good situation as far as that coaching opportunities go. Let's face it, Atlanta was literally a tiebreaker out of the playoffs. All right. Now, the Tennessee Titans, I would likely put them, only based on their availability in money. I guess I would probably keep them there because they come in 4 out of 7. So Fox says on the surface, there's a lot to love about the Titans situation. They have plenty of cap space. They're currently projected to be $95 million under the 26 cap, which ranks them 3rd in the NFL per OTC. Cam Ward has had some flashes of long-term franchise possibilities. Who knows? Mike Borgonzi, who just wrapped up an encouraging first season as the general manager, is a well-respected football executive across the league. Tennessee also has the number 4 pick overall. But controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk's unpredictability takes Amir out of the job. She has fired 2 head coaches and 2 general managers over the past 3 years. And Tennessee, however, has made the wise move of announcing a return to a more traditional front office structure moving forward, which clears up some questions. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this team, from a personal standpoint, they're in big trouble. I don't care. They have $95.5 million, $95.6 million in cap space. You're not going to buy a team with $95.5 million in your cap space. They finished 3-14 for a very good reason. They're really bad. And frankly, I think the only team that's worse than they are, in my opinion, is the Raiders. And we'll get to them later. But nonetheless, somehow, with the number 4 pick overall, they're going to somehow be expected to pull a rabbit out of their hat. And with, of course, Mendoza and Dante Moore likely being off the board to the Raiders and Jets, and Arizona's likely going to take Marigoya as that big offensive tackle. So that would leave Arvell Reese, a defensive end slash linebacker from Ohio State, as the possible pick in the mock draft situation. And let's face it, the Titans are lacking talent throughout their roster. So is a defensive end going to be the answer to this team? I mean, let's face it. The quarterback's going to need some help. The offensive line's going to need some help. And they weren't out of all the games. I mean, look, they lost some pretty bad games in the grand scheme of things. When you look at what Tennessee did in the past season, mind you, the season's still going on, but the playoffs are starting here. When you look at the games that they lost, all the way back to the preseason, they lost by 8, they lost by 14, they lost by 21, they lost by 26. That's preseason. It doesn't really matter. Now, actually, strike that. That's the regular season. The preseason, it's another story. And then they beat the Cardinals, which is, well, that Cardinals bad. 20-10. They got doubled up by them. The Patriots beat them 31-13. Colts stomped them 38-14 when the Colts were good. Chargers beat them by a touchdown. Texans beat them by 3. So they found some kind of a groove about 6-7 games into this. They were playing pretty well. And when you look at it, I mean, look, Seattle only beat them by 6. That's right, only 6. They did beat the Browns. They lost to the 49ers at San Francisco by 13. They beat Kansas City, and they lost tight game. Well, they lost a tight game against New Orleans and nobody else. But if you look back to the preseason, they were in these games. So they're not that bad. They have some pieces. So one would imagine that they would probably build around that quarterback to maybe score a little bit more. Because the defense, if you looked at it, yeah, it looks just at a quick glance, it looks like they're giving up 20 odd points a game, which is sort of standard in the National Football League as it stands. So I'm not so sure that a defensive end or a linebacker from Ohio State is going to really make a big difference for this squad. I would imagine that something offensively would make a little bit more sense. Nonetheless, I guess the powers that be in this draft world, that's what they believe. So somehow Arvell Reese potentially would be the guy. And so if that's the case, he would give, allegedly, Tennessee a talent boost up front to join 4-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons. So that only shores up one side. Everybody else is going to run to the other side. So Reese played only 97 snaps at the defensive end position, but his 18.5% pressure rate at that position ranked 7 in FBS. But that's college, man. The college game is really different than the pros. I'd say let's see if they can find somebody on the offensive side so they can maybe score some more points, because they were in quite a few games. And you got to look at that. All right, so moving on. So somehow they have them as the number 4, being Tennessee, the number 4 option for a coaching carousel. Now, the New York Football Giants come in at number 3, as in the third most attractive opening. And they say, being Fox Sports, the Giants may not have a ton of projected cap space at $11 million, 20th in the league, but they have promising building blocks on the rookie contract. So those include, of course, Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors, 2 really good players, and, of course, a really good tight end in Theo Johnson. And number 3 overall pick, Abdul Carter, and running back Cam Scadaboo. And look, Scadaboo missed half the season with an ankle injury, so the Giants have pieces. And I would say that they're a very attractive option because they've got some good young pieces in place. They also have the number 5 pick overall, and the prospective new coach would likely prefer to come in with a general manager. Joe Shun was retained after Brian Daboll's misseeding firing, right? So Brian's gone, and Shun's presence may not be a deal breaker just yet. The Giants 4-13, not a very good record. Again, $11 million in cap space. They have number 5 overall, but the Giants have pieces. If you look at that mock draft situation by the 4-letter network, they say Carnell Tate, wide receiver from Ohio State, might be their target, and it should be the Giants' main objective to get a playmaker around quarterback Jackson Dart, with Malik Neighbors recovering from his torn ACL, and Wan'Dale Robinson, set to become a free agent after a breakout 1,000-yard season. Of course, everybody gets 1,000 yards nowadays because they play 17 games. It's ridiculous. And so this guy's a receiver, and let's face it, the Giants need a receiver. So Tate is a polished wideout capable of executing every branch of the route tree. And he sure can handle the ball. I mean, look, the guy's got good hands, and yeah, he can separate as well, which is really important. So this guy knows how to get a push off of the defender, and he has 17.1 yards per catch this season, which is pretty darn good. So Tate would provide Jackson Dart with a true deep threat who can also work the intermediate levels, because Malik Neighbors is that guy too, but at a different state of the game. And you got to look at that one. So that coaching carousel, the New York Football Giants look like a pretty darn good option right now. So they say, being Fox Sports says, the Raiders are the second choice for coaching in the league. So they say, sure, things don't look good right now for the Raiders, who haven't had a winning season or made the playoffs in 4 years. But with the number one overall pick and more than $100 million in projected salary cap, second in the league, the Raiders will give its next head coach an ideal opportunity to rebuild the team alongside general manager whatever. They should have kept, in my opinion, Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is one of the best coaches in the last 30-plus years in the league. He's proven it at all levels. Pete Carroll's a hell of a coach. He should never, in my opinion, have been fired. We're going to come back with the Raiders in just a few minutes here on the Sports Circus. Don't go anywhere.
She got out. Stop it! Stop it!
If I was your mother and you had a drug problem, I'd grab you by the ear and make you call and get help. You can be in treatment tomorrow and start to get clean in 7 days. Follow Mom's advice and call the Detox and Treatment Helpline now. Write this number down.
800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. That's 800-814-8628.
Are you or someone you love struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol and want to be set free from the chains of addiction? Then call Addiction Helpline America right now to get the help you need. From drug and alcohol addiction to dual diagnosis treatment, we provide a confidential helpline to help people like you get sober and live happy, substance-free lives.
Treatment helped me get my life back. I was so addicted, the only person I could focus on was myself and what I needed. I hit rock bottom and lost everything. Through treatment, I was able to overcome those demons and focus on my family again.
I used until I overdosed and almost died. That was the end of the road for me. After seeking treatment, I now have hope. I learned skills that help me deal with life on life's terms.
800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. That's 800-426-4994.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. B-E-E-P-I-N autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Investors, keep listening to learn how to get your free gold report. A currency crisis is upon us. The U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency for over 50 years, but that is changing. It's time to protect your retirement. Decades of reckless borrowing and spending have critically weakened the dollar. The U.S. has become the world's biggest debtor with over $35 trillion in debt. Plus, the dollar's become weaponized. Countries are dumping it. Investors who wait until it's too late could lose big. There is one safe haven: gold. Diversify your portfolio with a physical asset they can't take away. Call the Reagan Gold Group right now and ask for your free gold guide. Here's our number:
800-876-7041. 800-876-7041. 800-876-7041. That's 800-876-7041.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMTV studio, AAMP Television. Folks, make sure you check out the sportscircus.com's partners page. Lots of great partners over at the sportscircus.com. In fact, our favorite out of all those partners, well, we have food favorites, we have guest favorites, we have author favorites, we have musical favorites. Let's go to music. How about this? How about the music of legendary rock band Blue Oyster Cult? Now, you heard Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult at the very top of the show saying, welcome to the Sports Circus. Buck is a friend of the show. He's a really, really good guy. And I tell you what, from a musical standpoint, for decades, multi-platinum, man, they are still doing it today. If you haven't seen them, folks, you better go see them. They don't use auto-tune. They don't use backing tracks. They don't use anything like that. It's really, really good music from very talented musicians, and they still rock like they did back in the day when they first hit the scene. Check them out at blueoystercult.com. That's blueoystercult.com. And on the partners page, just click on the logo for Blue Oyster Cult, and it'll take you right over to the tour page and their merch. Check them out, folks. That's blueoystercult.com, friends of the Sports Circus. All right, welcome back to everybody on radio and TV. You know who you are. And by the way, in case you missed the top of the show announcement from Vacation Buddies, they're giving away a couple of nights right here in Las Vegas, Orlando, Florida, or in Branson, Missouri. If you knew the answer to the simple trivia question that I gave you at the top of the show, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat it in case you're just tuning in right now. Which of these cities has the tallest building in America? Is it A, New York? Is it B, Chicago, or C, L.A.? New York, Chicago, or L.A.? Which one has the tallest building in America? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. And by the way, Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with the Sports Circus or with this station. However, they want to give you a couple of nights in Las Vegas, Orlando, Florida, or in Branson, Missouri. If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777. Call now. All right. You notice we give away a lot of applause on this show. Well, listen, we do have our moments with the booze and the bombs blowing up and all kinds of fun stuff. And we haven't had that happen just yet. But believe me, it does happen. So back to this list from Fox Sports of the top coaching vacancies out of the 7, they say in summary, so far we're going to go from the bottom to the top. They said out of the 7 availabilities, the Cardinals was number 7, being the least attractive. Then the Cleveland Browns at 6, Atlanta Falcons at 5, Tennessee Titans at 4, New York Football Giants at 3, the Raiders at 2. And they're saying, well, the Raiders have $100+ million, second on the list of projected cap space. They do have the number 1 pick overall. And of course, they have 3 cornerstone players. They have their defensive end Max Crosby. They have tight end Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty, really good running back. So they've got some good players. And Geno Smith's contract will be easy to cut, paving the way for a fresh start at quarterback, likely which would be Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. That would make the most sense. Yes, the Raiders are on the clock, is what everybody's saying. But you also have to look and say, all right, is a first-year quarterback going to be the answer for the Raiders? When the Raiders have proven, and this goes back to my long conversations with Raiders great coach Tom Flores. Tom's a friend of mine, and I have to tell you, folks, Tom, when he was doing the color commentating for the Raiders for years and years and years, when he was suddenly cut when they came here because of somebody that I will not mention, I will tell you that the conversations we had about the Raiders largely was the fact the Raiders could not stop the run. They could not stop there. They can't stuff the run. Look, you've got one defensive end. They call them edge rushers, whatever. You have one defensive end in Max Crosby, but you got nothing else around him. You go all the way back to when they were able to stop the run when they stopped, which was with Khalil Mack. And then Mack went to the Bears, then Mack went from the Bears to the Chargers and so forth. But my point is, when you look at what the Raiders could do and what they were able to do, they just didn't do it. And so, yeah, a quarterback would be great, and Mendoza is a good quarterback. I don't think he's the best option for the Raiders. I think he's better suited elsewhere in a system where maybe there's a quarterback that's going to be retiring and Mendoza can learn under the quarterback instead of stepping right in, because the game in the NFL is faster, and the game is going to have to slow down for him. And the Bears saw it with Caleb Williams this year. The game's finally slowing down for him, but the Bears also went out, spent a bunch of money to put an offensive line, which isn't great, but pretty good, around Caleb Williams, and now Caleb could do what he does. So if the Raiders are going to go ahead and they're going to pick Fernando Mendoza, the question is, what are they going to do for the offensive line? Because you've got two good weapons in Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. However, what you don't have are first-class, world-class wide receivers. We don't have that over here in Las Vegas. And we don't have an offensive line that will protect Fernando Mendoza, or even Dante Moore for that effect. The reality is the Raiders can't protect the quarterback, not how they think they can. So is it wise to go take a quarterback right now if you can't protect the quarterback? And a lot of people are complaining, well, the Raiders need to do this, they need to do that. Well, no, what they need to do is they need to be able to protect a quarterback. So let's just say hypothetically, the Raiders went out and piled up on offensive line and draft picks and all this other fun stuff. And let's say they were able to trade for offensive line, and let's say they were able to draft offensive line. Well, I don't know if you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, but they have a serviceable quarterback, which he's not good. He's not great in my opinion, but he's good enough to play in the league, and he's been there for a while, which is who? Geno Smith. Now, I don't think Geno Smith is the long-term answer, not by any stretch of the imagination. However, it seems like the Raiders can find somebody to play behind Geno Smith to plug the dam, for example. And there are players out there that could do that for the Raiders. But they're going to have to be able to protect the quarterback. So is Fernando Mendoza really the guy for the Raiders? Or do the Raiders trade down? Think about this. Do they trade down to Tennessee, to number 4, for example, who Tennessee is expected to take Arvell Reese, that defensive end and linebacker? Does it make sense? I don't think so. Maybe they trade down to Arizona, and maybe they pick up Mauigoya from Miami. Now, that makes a hell of a lot more sense because you always need somebody on the left side to protect the blind side of a right-handed quarterback. Now, that makes sense. And who else is available? Think about the offensive line side. Well, the offensive line in the first round is not as deep as you would imagine. You have Spencer Fano from Utah. Now, that may make a little sense because, I mean, let's face it, he's he's Miami's projected second-round pick in 24 in the grand scheme of things, but he's developed into a foundation player at left tackle. Do they trade all the way down and take back an enormous haul, being the Raiders, and maybe go after some of the other pieces that are out there? They could trade all the way down to 11 and take an enormous haul back. Because why? The Miami Dolphins need what? They need a quarterback. And they just hired Troy Aikman as a consultant who's a quarterback to do what? Help with the quarterback position. Because if Tua is going to be gone, which that's what the rumor mill has, well, it would seem like a good trading partner for the Raiders is the Miami Dolphins. Now, that makes a little bit of sense to me. You heard it here first, folks, because the only other place that they could go would be with number 17 all the way down potentially to the Detroit Lions. Well, the Detroit Lions have a pretty good quarterback in Jared Goff. But let's face it, Jared Goff is starting to age a little bit. And if the Detroit Lions somehow make a deal and trade all the way up for Fernando Mendoza, for example, well, can you imagine the haul the Raiders would get back? Plus, they would get an offensive tackle again. This guy is 6'6", 304. The other guy that I mentioned is 6'6", 315. It's kind of a sweet spot. So those are the two top 20 guys that I really believe from an offensive line standpoint that have a little something. I mean, you also have the guy out of Alabama, Caden Proctor. And he's 6'7", 366, maybe not as fleet of foot, but that's pretty much it in the offensive line category, unless you're going to go down to Ione from Penn State, which now you're all the way down to the bottom of the draft, which doesn't make sense to me. But I would think Miami would be a really good trade partner for the Raiders, and the Detroit Lions would be a very good trade partner. So the Raiders would have more options. And I'm sure, I can't be the only one thinking about this, but the Raiders seem to be in a pretty good position. I don't think firing the head coach was the answer because you can only play with what you got. But at the end of the day, the Raiders are in a really good spot. They probably should be considered as the number 2 coaching vacancy available. We'll get to the number 1 when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't, and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with a free call. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. That's 800-298-3173.
Are you or someone you love struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol and want to be set free from the chains of addiction? Then call Addiction Helpline America right now to get the help you need. From drug and alcohol addiction to dual diagnosis treatment, we provide a confidential helpline to help people like you get sober and live happy, substance-free lives.
Treatment helped me get my life back. I was so addicted, the only person I could focus on was myself and what I needed. I hit rock bottom and lost everything. Through treatment, I was able to overcome those demons and focus on my family again.
I used until I overdosed and almost died. That was the end of the road for me. After seeking treatment, I now have hope. I learned skills that help me deal with life on life's terms.
800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. That's 800-426-4994.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP television. Folks, make sure you check out the Sports Circus store. That's right, at thesportscircus.com. There's a tab right across the top. It says store. Lots of cool items for these cool temperatures. Hats, hoodies, t-shirts, sweatpants, sweat coats, travel mugs, coffee mugs, all kinds of cool stuff. Pillows, blankets, you name it, it's there. Thesportscircus.com store. Lots of great items with the clever Sports Circus logo on them. And, of course, they're all American-made items. We've got to like that. And if you mention my name, Ringmaster Sal, you'll get an extra 10% off your first order. How do you like them apples? All right, those is good apples. All right, welcome back to everybody. Our radio TV, Chicago Food Favorites, over on Facebook as well. All right, listen. We've been going through this list of top vacancies in the coaching world, according to Fox and everybody else. And the top 7, they said Arizona was the 7th, Cleveland was the 6th, Atlanta was the 5th, Tennessee was the 4th. That's based purely off of money. The New York Football Giants, number 3. The Raiders, number 2, which, I don't know, you know what? I guess I'm okay with that because they have the number 1 coaching vacancy, which is still a real head scratcher as to why John Harbaugh was let go from the Baltimore Ravens. So, I mean, look, after 18 seasons, yes, he won a Super Bowl as well. Very, very shocking to see that guy canned. I just don't get it anyway. And they have a good quarterback over there in Lamar Jackson. And, of course, Lamar Jackson didn't want to ask any questions or answer any questions about the coach being dumped after Week 18. And assuming the trade rumors surrounding Jackson have zero credence, the next coach inherits a 2-time MVP, when healthy, remains one of the NFL's most exciting quarterbacks. Now, Baltimore is currently projected to have more than $28 million in cap space and 11 draft picks this spring. 11. 4 of them are compensation. And, I mean, look, that's a pretty good position to be in. And they've got Derrick Henry as their back. They've got Lively and Zay Flowers. They got all kinds of pieces on that team. Oh, on defense with Roquan Smith and everybody else. These guys are pretty damn good. How they finished 8-9, I don't know. They fell asleep at the wheel on defense. I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe they should have done something with the defensive coordinator. But instead, they said, well, let's just go a different direction altogether, which I'm just baffled at it. But anyway, so Fox Sports is reporting on this like everybody else. But when you think about what the Ravens, where they stand in this whole mock draft situation. And so let's go down the food chain just a little bit. Let's get to Baltimore. And Baltimore is number 14 currently. And what do they have? They have a defensive tackle so far in the mock draft. And that's a very large human, Peter Woods from Clemson. Now, Woods entered the season as one of the top prospects in the 2026 class, but didn't have the season that many expected, finishing with only a couple of sacks after registering 3 as a sophomore. Well, that's only 1 different from a sophomore to a junior. So be it. So he's an explosive pocket collapser, which is very important. You got to be able to push the pocket. Folks, if you don't know what that means, you could push the pocket, you can collapse the pocket. The reality is you've got to push the pocket back into the quarterback. So you have that tackle box that blocks for the quarterback, the center and the 2 guards and the 2 tackles. So if you could push the pocket, you're pushing everybody backwards technically, and you're forcing the quarterback to roll out or to get flushed out of the pocket or to actually move the pocket itself. So there's a lot that somebody who actually pushes or collapses the pocket does, but it's 2 different things though. One creates holes, the other one just literally creates a wedge and pushes it backwards. In any event, Woods has to be more consistent according to the 4-letter network, but he can penetrate the backfield and would boost the Ravens defense for an aging team. Let's face it. They have been relying on a 36-year-old John Jenkins and a couple of other guys that are injury prone. So they probably need to stick with the defense. They have plenty of tools on offense. It's really a defensive push for the Ravens. They could go defense heavy on this and maybe add somebody on the offensive line that might help. But this is a defensive draft for the Baltimore Ravens. So is that the number 1 coaching job? Honestly, I would probably say yes, it is. But now you have to think of who is going to be available in the grand scheme of things in this coaching carousel. I mean, that's always it used to be the $64,000 question. Now it's the $64 million question. Or do we dare say the $64 billion question? Because we don't really know. The numbers are so big and so inflated, we don't even know. But what I can tell you is there are some quality candidates out there in the grand scheme of things with this whole coaching setup. And we think of some of the guys out there, obviously with, well, let's face it, the guy we just mentioned, John Harbaugh, is leading that list. And you could say that there are others too that are worthwhile. How about a list of 9, again, by Fox, going from bottom to top? They say Washington former offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know. Cliff is not really the defensive superpower, super brain, and I'm not so sure that coming off of that rough season of Washington, he's going to make a really big impact. And I don't care that he's 46 years of age, well-respected offensive mind. What about defense? That's the whole thing. Well, it doesn't go out of style, but guess what? Defense is needed. Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph is also available. And, I mean, look, it's wild to think that Denver's current defensive coordinator used to be the team's head coach, I mean, just a handful of years ago. And this guy's 53, but he isn't the busiest candidate, though. So his 11-21 head coaching record when he was with the Broncos sort of makes him not too terribly attractive, but he is part of a good system right now. He probably should stay where he's at. Now, Green Bay has Jeff Hafley available, their defensive coordinator, and their defense hasn't really quite been the same since the injury to Micah Parsons, but that doesn't mean that Hafley hasn't done a good job. And so I think that he is a viable candidate. You look back a year ago when he first stepped into the role, his unit jumped to 6th in points allowed and 4th in takeaways. That's pretty darn good. So I think he's one of those guys that should be considered. Here's one that I think is overrated, which is Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula. And so by metrics, Shula's unit is a top 10 defense. Yes, he's had a 2024 Defensive Rookie of the Year in verse, and he has built a solid unit overall, and I'm not really sure that he is the guy, though. And you say he's going to contribute in the future. He did contribute to a Super Bowl run. Yeah, his resume should only get more impressive, of course, as the Rams advance. And I don't think he's really that good of a choice, in my opinion. I would prefer the Chargers defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter, seems a little bit better, and he's in a better system as I see it. And frankly, much of what I just said about Shula is true about Minter, but there's a lot of buzz around both defensive coordinators in LA, but I believe that Minter really is the best, and he worked at the NFL and collegiate levels for Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh. How do you like that? So this pedigree is very impressive. This guy knows what it's like to do good on both sides of the ball. He seems like a viable candidate, and never mind the stats. The reality is 5th in yards allowed, 8th in EPA per play. That's not so damn bad. So this guy is a viable candidate. Jesse Minter's going to catch on somewhere for sure. Seattle, Clint Kubiak. This guy is one of the top candidates as I see it, and he is their offensive coordinator, and he's really put together a really good season in terms of managing the quarterback through ups and downs and essentially raising the play of the league's best receiver, and that's an Njigba, and building a physical offensive line really around complementary pieces in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So this guy is a viable top 2 or 3 pick, in my opinion, as far as a head coach. Brian Flores, I would run away from Brian Flores. I don't care. And yeah, he is the Vikings defensive coordinator, and he's done some decent things. But Brian Flores, if you look at him historically, he's been in the middle of things that, frankly, you wouldn't want to. They seem to be more drama-driven than anything. I would run from Brian Flores. They say he's number 3. Number 2, Kevin Stefanski from the Cleveland Browns. And Kevin was really dealt a bad hand over in Cleveland with all the drama that their ownership has taken on. And I don't believe that Kevin is the problem in Cleveland. I think it's the ownership, and it's the lack of trust down the chain from the ownership. And so Kevin Stefanski is going to find himself working very quickly, just like John Harbaugh. Both of these guys, I would imagine, are going to find themselves in gigs. And I don't know, probably John Harbaugh is going to end up in Vegas, right here in Vegas, with the Raiders, I'm going to guess. Stefanski probably would find himself with the New York Giants because that makes the most sense. But some of the other guys to fill some of the other slots, boy, there's a lot of questions. And there's going to be some more openings too. And I'm not so sure that there's not going to be 3 or 4 more openings. I really believe there are. And yeah, there's a bunch of coaches out there, but I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in the Super Bowl. And now we have odds real quick for the games coming up on Wild Card Weekend. The Rams open up at -10 at the Panthers. Mind you, the Panthers beat the Rams about 5 weeks ago. Remember that one. And the line's up to 10.5. That's across the board. I'll tell you what, Carolina with 10.5 looks awfully good, folks. Green Bay opens up -1.5 at Chicago. And the line is mixed 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. The casinos, Caesars has it at -1.5. MGM has it at 1. So if you're a Bears fan, then obviously you're going to want that extra half a point for that 1-point victory. So you'd probably want to head over to Caesars to make your wagers over there. Buffalo traveling to Jacksonville. Buffalo opens up -1.5, just like Green Bay. Same mix, 1.5 all over the place. And frankly, the Bills will probably win the game straight up anyway. A very good Jacksonville team. They're just probably a player or so short. I'm going to give this one to the Bills. I'm giving this one to you for free. The Bills will win a very tight game in Jacksonville. The 49ers open up +3.5 on the road at Philadelphia. Brock Purdy is still in question with a potential finger injury. They're up to 4.5 now across the board. Eagles -4.5 seems like a lot of points to me. I don't know. I'm looking at the 49ers maybe losing by a field goal. The Chargers open up +3.5, and it's still +3.5 across the board. I think the Chargers pull the upset in the playoffs right here. And the experienced Chargers against the inexperienced Patriots. Look for the Chargers to win that game. The Houston Texans -3.5 at Pittsburgh. This one should be the Texans all day and twice on Sunday. These guys are awfully good. They probably have the best defense in the NFL. Watch out. The Houston Texans may destroy the Pittsburgh Steelers and end Aaron Rodgers' career. That's going to do it for the circus today, folks. I'm your ringmaster, Sal. We'll see you in about 23 hours on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
I'm your ringmaster, Sal, of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it out here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.